Package from China time. So let's find out it's in the inside. Rip this thing apart. I just wanted to see how they made. I think this is something to do with the fan, so I'm not going to be touching that part over there. Let's remove this screw over here. It's a long one. We get some movement over there. We can also remove the front over here. I just wanted to see what is going on. I just wanted to see how they actually assembled everything. So I don't know what's. Okay, we just slide this out. Okay, there's another way to go to. Oh, we need to remove this over there. I always find it really genius how they actually made these things. Oh, that squeaking sound. That's it. I can actually remove this 3D printed part. And let's see, how did they assemble it with these 3 screws over here. So the 4 are actually for the hard drive. But let's just rip this thing apart. What's maybe fun to show is the way how they actually assembled this using these plastic nuts with the metal screws. So I'm not going to be removing the hard drive yet. I just want to slide this main board out and ooh, okay. So there comes really some serious heat from here. So one of the reasons why this thing was like the weird thing that was going on is that the one of the screws were already loose. But you know what's a bit more interesting, that they didn't implement a backup battery. Okay, that's weird. So we do have like a single style of memory. Let's see what they're using. They're using Kingston. Okay, that's nice. But yeah, again, it's a single channel. So this is the performance, what you're getting. All right, let's click this back in. So there was nothing really much to see. So we do have like some different connectors on the main board, but I think with comfort, we cannot really configure anything when it comes to different kind of, let's say, adding new, let's say, SATA ports or anything else. It's just like a simple main board with this massive cooler. So what is interesting that we do have actually a socket over here. And would it be optional to actually upgrade this old school chip with a new one? Maybe an i5 or an i7? Or is it just going to be like another way too expensive thing to do? But I just wanted to showcase, it looks like a brand new mainboard if you're looking at the way how this looks. But yeah, this looks really nice. Would it like maybe produce new mainboards for old CPUs again and just doing something like this emulation machine? Another thing we have seen with those portable devices, they were using really old school, let's say, hard drive, and that is nothing different over here. This is a Western Digital 500 gigabyte, and as you can just see of the label alone, this thing is pretty old. Wait, they're talking about Windows XP over here. So yeah, this is really old, and I think this is one of the biggest problems. So we're having this okay fancy case, 3D printed, brand new, let's say, mainboard, but they're using these shitty old hard drives. Something was loose on the inside. At the back we're going to be finding all of the connections. So I'm obviously getting a little bit of Raspberry Pi vibes with this particular one over here. So with the particular HDMI we're going to be using. So they actually screwed these things together. I must say the overall, you can see that 3D printed, but it's not like super bad quality. The only thing I'm missing is, where is my power supply? Ha, had a brain fart. It was still laying around. So they're giving me actually the plug over there. They're having over here the dongle for the controllers. So we're going to be having 2 of these controllers, going to be configured with 1 dongle. So that's going to be already plugging in. The power supply itself is going to be 12 volt, 5 amp, almost a little bit questionable. Like these things are super lightweighted, not like super lightweighted, but still 5 amps. Seriously, I seriously doubt it. But the point is, we're going to be plugging this thing in here. Doesn't matter which port, and we're going to be connecting everything to see what is going on. Everything is connected. Oh wait, nope, I forgot the HDMI. Now everything is connected. So the front, I'm thinking this is the on-off switch over here. I can actually hear the hard drive spinning up. So we're having actually 500 and 1 terabyte editions. So the controller have been configured too. There was a really weird noise in the inside. But yeah, I can actually hear it. Well, next thing we're going to be needing to do is the LED needs to be turning on. There we go, something is happening. That's a good idea. Let's lower the lights over here and to see if this thing even going to be booting up, because maybe with transport something messed up. Whoa, ventilation is going to be starting up, and this is it. Okay, so it seems to be booting up. That's a good thing. That's a good start. Booting up into Batocera Linux. Let's see what's going on with Batocera Linux itself. The game Retro is actually the store that's selling these things, or sometimes it's like another store that sells another store's products. But let's see what's going on and how is it, the overall specifications. So when it comes to the 1TB edition, I think you're going to be having more space for actually PlayStation, Sega Saturn and stuff like that. But I just also wanted to showcase like how freaking long it takes for this thing to boot up. Fancy intro! And let's see how fancy it actually is, because that is something they already did. And of course it's cut off in the middle of the video. And I can hear the hard drive making some weird noises. And I do wonder what kind of hard drive. So later on I'm going to be doing a teardown. But you can see it's really, really slow. Oh, they're using a very nice looking interface. But let's take a close look at what you can actually do. So out of the box, this thing comes with all kinds of different platforms that support. Of course, due to the power of the game box depends how much we can upscale or not at all, or we can play. So you can see we're having all kinds of different emulators. I think when it comes to the GameCube, Wii, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, there we're going to be finding quite a lot of challenges. But in overall, I think it's pretty cool. PlayStation 2. So it's quite a nice overall collection. I love how they implement all of the thumbnails nicely. I don't know if there is a video. No, they didn't implement the video, but it's absolutely awesome. And you know, there's something you don't see very often. So at this point, I must say that I'm quite surprised how well they configured everything at this point. So the overall configuration, what is cool that we're having even categories, 2-player games, 4-player games, all games seems to be, arcade, light gun games. So it will be interesting to see if they have like this plug and play kit in the future where we can just plug in this machine and just play light gun games. Vertical games, absolutely awesome, but also having wheel games. That is the first time I have ever seen it on the game box like this. So we have really awesome to add, like say a racing wheel, action, adventure, beat 'em ups. So beat 'em ups is going to be absolutely massive, but this is another problem I do notice with a lot of these things. Look at how many duplicates, and that's another thing that you need to take consideration. But let's take a close look at the main menu. What are we getting when it comes to the software itself? So we're running on Batocera version 39. So let's see, system settings. And let's see, there's some weird thing going on. Information about the system. So we're running on a 500 gigabyte. I must say the image itself is quite big when it comes to, let's say, the 500 gigabyte. So that makes me wonder what is actually on the 1 terabyte. We're running an i3 Intel now with the 3rd generation. So that has actually 2 cores and 4 threads. But it actually says it's running already on 57 Celsius. But that's it. You know, that is actually what we're getting when it comes to that. I think the biggest downside is going to be the onboard GPU. That's an HD Graphics 4000. So we're not going to be having some fancy stuff with upscaling. So I just wanted to showcase what's going on when it comes to just a native pinball. Let's see. Man, this is my jam. Pinball. Let's see. Hero. Hot pinball. Oh man, there's all kinds of cool stuff. We're having patriotic pinball. That's for the PlayStation. Music ball. There was one particular game. Woo! Pinball Gator. Oh yeah. Let's see if it boots up. That's cool. They implemented bezels. We can change out with the back buttons what kind of different colors. Let's choose this one. Can just do this in the game. But if you just want to play some old school emulation with the Game Boy, this is just going to be fun. But take consideration, there are like really cheap options out there nowadays. I did notice like 20 bucks, you have like this plug and play stick that can just do the same thing. Select the start is giving you the option to go back to the menu. It will take a little bit of time. But let's see what's going on over here. So we have a lot of pinball and I think that's so cool. But there was one particular one that I find interesting and that was the PowerShot pinball. What is that one? It's for the DS. Okay, it's fun to actually start into the DS. Let's try that in a little bit of an emulation. I do notice the hard drive is pretty slow because pressing the A button will need like 5 seconds to actually load up the game itself. It's also for going back to the main menu. So with the DS I did notice some weird thing going on. So already messing with some other emulator machines and somehow there was something. Let's see if I can mess around with the analog stick, but I'm not getting anything going on over here. So when it comes to the over configuration of this is absolutely annoying. So DS is kind of unplayable. Reset. Alien Crush returns for the Wii. That's one I would love to check out. And the same is also with the Wii. So when it comes to button configuration, man, it's absolutely a freaking nightmare. See, and this is what I mean about these plug and play things. It's just a mess. But enough with everything that doesn't work and the pinball games. So let's take a close look at first the user interface. They're using the PlayStation X Master. That's actually how it's called for the people actually who wonders what is going on over here. But let's get into some other stuff. Let's go to the PlayStation X for Batocera. So with PlayStation, let's start with testing, and I must say the overall configuration of this image is pretty good. So this is not like the most convenient way to search, because this is going to be taking forever. Using the back buttons will skip a big portion of the list, but everything looks pretty good. There's one game I just wanted to check out, and that is Alien. No, not, is it one? No, this is a different one. It was something about Assault. It's absolutely pure nostalgia for me, because I played it back in the day a lot. However, you know, there are many different games, and you know, let's deep dive into a couple of them to see what is going on. Assault Rigs, that was the one. Let's see what's going on, because I have noticed a lot of problems with PlayStation and background music. But let's see if it's even going booting up. I must say that loading times are quite slow. I don't know what, I'm really curious with the teardown what kind of hard drive they're using, but I think this is going to be like a really old or maybe slow one, because this thing is pretty slow. Normally I had like some better experiences having those plug and play 2 TB to USB. Well, let's see if they implement the music. The answer is very simple. No, they didn't implement the music, and I have no idea why. Maybe, no, I don't have any idea. I think they're just don't stop caring about it. Oh man, this game has so many freaking cool soundtracks. But the emulation performance is running on native. No problem whatsoever there. Time for some Wipeout. And another game without music. Oh, you know, another game that has such a cool soundtrack library. I love Wipeout, by the way. But Wipeout XL is another game I'd love to play on the PlayStation and even link them up with multiple PlayStation. But so far, PlayStation emulation is working great on these older, let's say, i3 models. But what is more interesting is PlayStation 2. How will that run? Because this is going to be absolutely a challenge, because some of these older PCs do struggle big time. So I must say the overall layout, I do like it when it comes to the configuration. They did an amazing job over here. But let's see what's going on. There's not a lot of stuff on here because of the old 500 GB drive that we're having. I think if you're having like 1 or 2 TB images, you're going to be having so much more. But so out of the box, we do have like a nice overall collection of games. But let's start off with some God of War, because this is one that's very difficult to emulate. So with the intro, we also see that we do have some great performance. But I think when it comes to God of War, we need to get into the gameplay to see what's actually going on. So when it comes to the PlayStation 2 emulation on this older i3, we have seen a couple of these devices that had the option to actually boot up PlayStation 2 games, but it runs a little bit better now. Of course, it's still not like it's supposed to be. That's what I mean. But still choppy. But it is better than I have seen of those other like really cheap models. Woo! Huh. But when it comes to the compatibility, I think there's going to be having the biggest overall issue. What kind of emulator are they actually running? Let's get into the bloody save. Oh man. So in the beginning I did notice a lot of stuttering. Yeah, I can see that it still struggles big time. Let's get into the race and see how the overall performance will be now. Yeah, this is the same situation like God of War. You can see this thing is not powerful enough to run the 3-dimensional games. Right, actually to a certain point, I wouldn't say playable, because this runs really slow. I already noticed a lot of glitching going on, but I just wanted to see what's going on when it comes to the 2-dimensional games, because most of the time it is highly possible 2-dimensional stuff can be playable. And let's be honest, there are like a lot of great titles. I'm gonna take you for a ride. That is something we're gonna be finding out. So far, so good. It's quite unfortunate that the top buttons are pretty awful. But the two-dimension stuff, as you can see over here, works fine. So we have seen before with Marvel vs. Capcom on the Dreamcast back in the day that we had like these low-powered boxes, that we had the same issue. But even with the Supers going crazy, we had like the same issue and all kinds of weird things. PlayStation Portable is another system that can be very troublesome to actually emulate. However, when it comes to the PCs, we do have like overall better performance. We can also do a little bit of tweaking in the upscaling, but at this point I just wanted to see what is going on. Does it actually work and how does it play? Because native resolution is not like the best way to play PlayStation Portable. And also if you're going to be using this on a big screen. Ooh. Darius Boost is not like the most difficult game to actually emulate. Of course we're going to be needing some God of War, but I just wanted to see what is going on. So those mini games can be played without any problem whatsoever, but also I see that we have some overall great performance when it comes to these kind of games too. So PlayStation Portable on native is quite promising, that is one thing. You can get into the menu, so far I have seen, we can speed it up. Nope. So that's quite unfortunate. Well, it would be fun to actually get into the main menu or at least the emulator menu and mess around with its settings to see how far we can push it sometimes. But I'm just going to be leaving it as it is. So the Sega stuff, we're going to be looking into Sega Genesis. This is not going to be a problem whatsoever. So it is kind of cool to actually get into the 32 weeks, for example, and just play those games. But also this runs most of the time no problem on these devices. So, and that's the reason I don't really want to focus too much on it. So Sega CD is another really cool system that we do have the option to actually play. But of course we're going to be needing a little bit of testing of the Sega CD. And that seems to be booting up. It is possible sometimes they just completely mess up the most simple emulators. But with the Sega CD, it seems to be all working just fine. Sega Saturn is another system we do see more often on those cheaper game boxes. I love to try some Die Hard Arcade, because that is another very cool title. And it has a lot of problems running on many of those game boxes. But we're going to be just trying it on native resolution at this point. But it's quite unfortunate that I do have the idea, yeah, that it runs really bad. But the Sega Saturn is a very difficult emulator to actually handle. I don't understand it, why this is running really bad. Because, you know, it should be not like a big problem with some of the game, but it can also be a compatibility issue with the game itself. Just double check advanced options that he had implemented something. But now they didn't do some upscaling, so that means that this game is way too much actually to run on here. Hybrid Dual, let's just check out in the simple dual, let's say two-dimensional games with some Hyper Dual. And also this game runs pretty choppy. I still wonder, like, is there something to do maybe with the emulator, that we need to mess around with different emulators, because there's so many options out there. I think Beetle, but also when it comes to just having some other emulators. Because you can just feel and hear that is really choppy. That is really unfortunate. This is, by the way, a pretty cool game. Man, this game is cool. And sometimes you find the most random stuff on these devices. Hyper Dual. Okay, that's one I need to check out again. But how about the Sega Dreamcast part? We're not going to be testing out this game again. But let's take a close look at some other titles. Oh yeah. But how about the Sega Dreamcast overall emulation? So far, does look really nice. I'm using a 24-inch screen. So they didn't implement 4:3, they're using widescreen, no bezels. So that's a little bit unfortunate. But let's get into the game to see how the overall performance is, because this is always like a debatable situation. There are some hiccups, but it can't do with this hard drive, because I do notice that hard drives are really slow. There we go, you can just hear the minor hiccups. But the emulation is just fine. Let's go to the arcade counterpart with some Sega Naomi. I don't expect any weird things, but you can see the minor hiccups there. Hiccups. How do I shoot? Zombie Revenge. Such a weird game, but interesting. I can't move, same situation with the analog stick again. Yeah, there we go. Shoot the guy with the freaking shotgun. Wow, the guy got a freaking machine gun. Give me that one. Oh yeah, I was like testing out the freaking game for emulation issues. You know, why not? Why shoot him? Let's punch the guy. I must say that I do really enjoy this game. I just should pick it up and just play it more often. I always have the idea with this game that when it comes to beat 'em up with my bare hands, it's just more convenient. So let's move into some N64, but you can see the same thing like we had with Dreamcast. You have the same situation that it also like do a little bit of stuttering. But overall, I must say that normally when it comes to these kind of performance mini PCs, we don't have an issue, and we can actually have so much better performance than some simple game box. So I just wanted to really wonder like what's going on. So let's get into the gameplay. Man, Blast Corps, such a fun game. Okay, deeper analog sticks seem to be working. There we go. Let's bash into stuff. Yeah! And also this seems to be working fine, as it don't have any weird things. Normally when I'm crashing into the buildings with some cheaper game boxes, it stutters like crazy. But let's take a close look at some other games, like maybe GoldenEye or so. They're using some weird, interesting feature of the emulator, because everything looks really nice, no blurry. We have this weird line going on, but there's something to do with the emulator and just compatibility. So there's something we can actually do about it. We can also mess around with, let's say, some settings, different emulators, but I'm really curious, besides like the minor glitches, do we have some overall good performance? Are both of the joystick, or at least like everything configured correctly? Because that is absolutely an issue. Okay, you have like the minor glitch over there, but you don't see anything going on. So let's see, this is going to be set correctly. Okay, this is messed up. Look at this. Oh man, it does hiccup. It's like freaking uncontrollable. This thing is way too sensitive when it comes to the joystick. So, but overall, beside like minor hiccups and glitches, this is absolutely playable, or to a certain point. But the controls are absolutely a mess. And that makes me wonder, like, is this to do because I'm having these fake PlayStation 5 and they mapped everything with a different controller so far? And that's absolutely one of those many problems you will face with these freaking bloody cheap things. Next up, some GameCube. And the reason why, because they always like say, hey, this runs GameCube, this runs Wii and everything craziness. But you know, with these really cheap old school stuff that is inside of these 3D printed products, you know, it's absolutely a hit or miss. It's more a question of like what is compatible with the emulator and what is going to be needing more power. You can hear the hiccups again, like that one. But let's load up into the game. This comes nice when it comes to compatibility. We do have like better overall performance like this. Yeah, but this is unplayable. And that's also the reason why I just want to focus on these, let's say, more demanding, say, just devices or platforms. And it will be possible if you have like a simple two-dimensional game, again, it's going to be having an overall better performance, but this is just completely unfreaking playable. So when it comes to emulation on these devices, I must say that it's always going to be a little bit of an hit or miss with the more high-end systems. But of course there is so much that you can actually play with this. It's absolutely insane. However, the 8-bit, 16-bit, handheld, I don't really expect a lot of problems there. But I think an image like this just needs way more power. Think about an AMD Ryzen at least that has like a better onboard GPU. And of course have more power, more cores and everything else. But if you just want to play the old school games, I think there are like way better options out there. So we do have like Plants vs Zombies. Let's just boot it up for fun to see what's going on. Does it even boot up? Because I had tried this a gazillion times off camera with different kind of devices, but also going to be having so many freaking issues. Yeah, like this one. So I just wanted to check it out. We do have like Xbox, that is kind of cool. So I do wonder like what's going on with this. Let's see if we can even play some old school Xbox Classic. It's kind of cool to see Xbox Classic added to the list of many different devices. But oh yeah, already the Xbox logo struggles big time. I just wanted to start up with something simple like Tetris. But this seems to be working all fine. Man, I love Tetris. But let's get ready to rumble with some Rayman. So I am really curious how this is going to be working out. But it is kind of cool to see that how great compatible this is. This is one of those games that I personally never played before.